Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Good Morning Soul. Today, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, and I should probably introduce this series before I begin. And normally, I review everything I see. I review every game I play, every movie I watch, every anime I binge, whatever it is, I review it. There are a couple exceptions to that rule, however. Back in the day, I made not a rule, let's say, but I just didn't review superhero movies or really any comic book movies. And back then, I don't think I did books based off of movies unless like I never planned to read the book. I was very stuck in my ways, and the reason I didn't want to review like the Marvel movies was because I never read their comic books, and it also didn't make sense because I was watching those movies in a very weird order. Like before I watched Iron Man or Captain America, I saw the Avengers. So in my mind, it made sense to become a comic book fan first, and it still makes sense to do that, but I'm more realistic looking at that. But now I'm like really into these movies, really invested in these characters, and I obviously want to talk about them. And and I just saw this movie called Spiderman Into the Spiderverse, and I never so badly have wanted to make a review despite not being ready for it. And I also want to watch all these movies again and want to make bigger videos out of it, so that's also been a reason why I haven't reviewed them. I also don't do it for Star Wars movies. I don't do it for the Disney movies or Pixar movies. Or I guess I've reviewed like one Pixar movie, but that's the reason I don't do it. But my rules tend to fluctuate. But anyway, I also try not to review things out of order. Like I'll try to, before I watch a new movie, to watch the movie that came out before it. I'm weird. But this is one instance. Like I've done a couple like vlog style reviews just to get my thoughts out there. And if I do a bigger review one day, then I end up doing it. But in this case, I had to talk about this movie because I just enjoyed the shit out of it. And I really didn't think that much of this film going into it because I saw the trailers. Like, it looked interesting, but at the same time, there's a new Spider-Man game, there's a Venom movie, a lot of Spider-Man content this year, so I wasn't jumping into it like, oh my god, this is gonna be so amazing, or anything. And I didn't find this out till after the fact, but it's by the studio that does fucking Minions, or not Minions, fucking the Emoji Movie. So that still doesn't make sense to me. It's like they took their worst animators and their worst creative minds and were like, yeah, you guys just make that fucking movie and we're gonna make this really cool project over here that's gonna be written well, unlike the Emoji Movie. But let's not focus on that. So this film takes place in a whole new Spider-Man universe. There's like 5 Spider-Man cinematic universes. It's crazy. And this one, technically, despite having all these open dimensions, has nothing to do with any of them. And in this universe, Spider-Man is like the golden boy. He's spectacular. He's the amazing Spider-Man, right? And then this kid named Miles, he gets bitten by assumably the same spider, maybe not. He does kill it afterward. But he develops spider powers and is immediately thrown into high expectations, which is a huge theme of this movie. Where Spider-Man, I'm not going to spoil anything, but he is taken out of commission temporarily, and it opens up a whole new dimension with a bunch of other Spider-Mans from other dimensions coming into this one. And so while Miles is trying to become the Spider-Man of this universe, he is being trained by Spider-Man who is kind of like the shit version of the Spider-Man from that world. Like, if Peter Parker did not live up to its expectations, this would be him. And he is training Miles, who is trying to do the opposite of that. And it's a really cool dynamic. And then you got Spider-Gwen. It was cool to finally know about her and see her. Like, I see all the merch and really cool things with that character, but I don't know like the lore behind her, so it was cool just to at least see her. I love her concept design. I love her in this movie. I like, even when they introduce her, it's like she has her own movie practically that it feels like she was doing. Like, she was like, my name is Wanda. Like, and we were just like, I was just like, okay, that's cool. It wasn't just like they wrote her as if she's just gonna be like a stuck-up bitch who's gonna be like, okay, no, I don't know you. But in reality, she's a normal person doing her own thing in this weird universe. But anyway, I didn't even talk about probably the best thing about this movie, which is the animation. Every fucking frame of this movie is amazeballs. I don't know the last time I watched a movie and every single moment of it visually interested me. And whether it's just characters' expressions with the whole cartoony, how do I describe it? It has like the comic book whooshes and the booms, the subtitles, right, that pop up on screen. That is a great addition. They mix in other animation styles when you meet some of the other Spiderverse characters. That people who've seen the film know what I'm talking about. I like that. That's really cool. And on top of that, the action scenes in this movie are like jaw-dropping. And I don't mean that in like I'm gonna say some dumb shit like little film review words, right? No, it's literally like your jaw will drop. That's how good it is. And I know I'm sucking this movie's dick, and that's because I want to. That's how fucking good it is, and I will suck this movie's dick all day. And it's crazy because if I had to pick a favorite superhero, it'd probably be Spider-Man, but a part of that is just because I think from playing a couple of the games as a kid, I did like the old Spider-Man movies, but I'm not like attached to them or anything. And then the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I don't really remember them, but the first one, from what I remember, I really liked the second one, despite everyone shitted on it. I'll have to watch it again though, but despite that, and despite that there was a whole new Spider-Man like a year or two ago, Homecoming, and I actually love that movie. It just wasn't like amazing enough, you know? He felt very much like a B-list character in the Marvel universe, which is kind of fair. It's kind of what they're doing with him. It's okay. It's kind of like Spider-Man has big shoes to fill. That's kind of his character. But this film, like the Peter Parker and like both versions of Peter Parker in this film they felt like him. They talked like him. I don't even fucking read the comic books, and I have that vision of Spider-Man that I think everyone knows about, but like you don't see it in film. And I think this was the first movie that was like, it captured everything about him. Like, that Peter Parker was nerdy enough, he was funny enough, he was confident enough. He was that kind of like, by being a teacher to Miles, he was able to kind of show that he's been doing this for a while and show that he knows what Miles is going through. The music, by the way, is also really good. I know they basically stole the Black Panther concept where it's like, okay, well, we're gonna have our original music, it's gonna be a score, and then we're gonna take a bunch of rap songs and other songs from popular artists, I was gonna say from other genres. High alarm. That's what you get for filming at 1:40 in the morning, and you gotta go to work in like an hour. The soundtrack is basically a bunch of rappers, and whereas Black Panther, it was a little bit weird that they would throw some of those songs in there, but it worked out. like the occasionally used. They just didn't use the majority of those songs. This soundtrack, despite stealing Black Panther's concept of what they're doing, they actually use these songs in the film. Like when I'm looking at this soundtrack right here, I was like, okay, Sunflower Way Up. That song was Juice World. That was in there. That Lil Wayne song. The majority of these were in there, and they were actually used really effectively. In the case of the Sunflower song, it was actually a part of the plot, where it's like, okay, that's how you unstick apparently to walls, is you relax. So when Miles is trying to relax, he goes to his comfortable place of listening to music, and he's a 14-year-old black kid. It would make sense he would fucking enjoy some Post Malone and Sway Lee. It's a little bit cringy, but it works. That being said, a couple of these songs aren't used that great. Like, there's like a really emotional moment, and then fucking they played this song called Scared of the Dark by Ty Dolla $ign and Lil Wayne, and I felt like that one, it was like, I'm trying to feel right now, and you're just throwing this like overly produced song, and it just doesn't mesh well. When he's doing like Spider-Man shit, like if you're just swinging through a city, yeah, play some hit songs. Or if it's just the other moments that were used throughout this film, every other time pretty much worked. I kind of felt like we needed like that song Sunflower to play to kind of get the beginning, middle, and end to that, where it's like, okay, this is him listening to music, this is him kind of developing that thing, and then this is him in Spider-Man mode listening like to the song, like he's swinging around the city with that. And they even stole the concept design for this cover art, where it's like Black Panther, they just stole, or they just used the Wakanda thing. And for this, they just have Spider-Man's face, and it's also very simplistic. But it also has like an outline of a city in his eyes. That's really cool. I do think that's really cool. And I do like Miles. He is a super fun character. I will say that I felt like he needed to become the role he is at the end a little bit sooner, because through the majority of this film, he's wearing like a discount you buy from Toys R Us Spider-Man outfit, right? And it's a, obvious progression, and it shows that how early and bad he is at being Spider-Man, right? But later in the movie, there's like this big montage where he becomes Spider-Man, and then he's able to gear up, basically, with all the other Spider people. And this transition probably realistically happened in like an hour to him. And I just felt like we really should have sprinkled this in and used this, and that way it didn't feel rushed, and so we can actually get this cool black outfit that he's wearing in the poster and have that in the film more, because it is like a really cool idea of how they're using it. It's like this spray painted version of Spider-Man's outfit. I really just wanted more of that, and more of him being like the Spider guy, and rather than just kind of following everyone else around. And that's it. That pretty much is all my thoughts on Miles. His family dynamic is also really good. Basically, his dad and uncle are super prevalent. I'm not going to give it away, but both of them tie into the themes of living up to your expectations. And one of them in particular, there's a super emotional scene. You really feel that emotional scene. And you really like the little banter between Miles and his dad. Every little bit of it I loved. I love Miles' family. There's also some other iconic Spider-Man characters like Aunt May and Mary Jane, both of which kind of take a back seat and have different outcomes depending on what dimension they're in. Like the main dimension, they're you get the best of those characters. It's like where the dimension that Miles is living in is like the classic best case scenario Spider-Man universe, and that version, that Aunt May is really cool, and we see that Mary Jane, she's also pretty much what we'd expect, and it turned out a lot different in the other timeline, which makes it like feel even more cooler. We also get some of the villains. Kingpin is like the main bad guy of this film, and from what I am told, he is a Daredevil villain, which is interesting. I feel like I played a Spider-Man game though where he was in it, so that, like, because I recognized him, so I was like, okay, so he's an obvious Spider-Man villain, but I was told differently, so I don't know. I like his motivation. I like that despite he's willing to murder people and crush the entire world to get these people that he loves back to life. That plan doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but he's still gonna fucking do it because that's all he cares about. And I like that this, even though he cares that deeply and that makes him sympathetic, he is still like, he at all costs will do this. He does not care about who he kills. He does not care about easily offing one of your favorite characters. He doesn't give a shit. He's a brutal savage, despite having a soft heart. Other than that, the other villains, I don't want to ruin it, so if you don't like spoilers, then fast forward a little bit, but they have Doc Ock in this, and it's actually, she's a girl, and they introduce her in a really creative way. It's like we care about her, and then we find out she's Doc Ock. That's really cool, and she was able to really, like, we see her in the end fight scene, and she was a perfect villain for those fight scenes because she was able to counteract and be a good foil for these spider people who are flying everywhere. Other than that, we get some the discount Spider-Man villains who are like the Prowler, Green Goblin's in it. All of these guys, Scorpion, didn't need to be in here, but they're kind of just here to fill out the bad guys team. Even Green Goblin is like a fucking weird monster. It's not the actual Green Goblin that I know, at least. So that was interesting. In the end, I'm kind of happy they did it just for the sake of like mixing up and giving the bad guys a little bit more flavor. So obviously some people are going to be like, oh my god, it's just like Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's so bloated and all these guys are all over the place. Shut the fuck up. Like, they're not harmful. It's just a cool little bit like minions to have for the bad guy. Okay, they're in every single movie, and in this case they just happen to be these iconic characters. Get over it. Other than that though, I don't really have any complaints for this film. I love the Stan Lee cameo. I love the very meta references that are going on here, because there is a lot of Spider-Man pop culture media throughout this film. Like, they're playing an episode of Community with Donald Glover, and it's an episode about Spider-Man, but Spider-Man plays the uncle in Spider-Man Homecoming. He plays Miles' uncle, and he's in this film, and they're in their uncle's house when this scene is playing. I read this on Reddit just to make it all make sense, and one person was like, there's levels to this shit. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. But other than that, there's like, oh yeah, there's like weird little things, like in Miles' room, he has a Chance the Rapper coloring book album on his wall, but instead of a 3 on Chance's hat, it's a 4. And I thought that was like this whole elaborate thing, like maybe there's a new album being dropped or something. And I was like, maybe he snuck one in on the soundtrack because I hadn't downloaded it yet. But when I did go to download it, the song didn't exist. And it turns out that they were just in an alternate dimension. So yeah, it's a 4 instead of a 3. So I was like, okay, that kind of sucks. And then there's this thing with The Weeknd. They have a lot of little bits of lore that I geeked out over. Just the stuff in the background. Like, I could watch this whole movie on fucking mute. That's how much I enjoyed it. I could just look at the backgrounds and enjoy the fucking animation. and I can say that about 0 films. There are 0 other films I want to watch on mute. I could watch this movie as just the soundtrack playing. There you go. That being said, though, I think that's all the like initial stuff that came up on my mind. And by the way, this is so far my favorite film of 2018. So far, like, we're not at the end of the year. By the time you're watching this, it'll be February, I believe. It's just crazy. Because I, for the longest time, like, because I was making my list for the year and ranking each film, and I was kind of complaining to myself, like, man, I had a good amount of 9 out of 10s this year, but there's no 10 out of 10. And you want at least like 1 a year, you know? And right when I was thinking that, I saw this film. And right when I thought, like, okay, I guess I know what my favorite film of the year is, that's when I saw this film, and it instantly became a 10 out of 10 classic for me. And I know a big part of that is just this movie hits all of my personal, like, things I like about not just film, but media. Like, the super interesting animation style. Like, I wish every piece of art was as stylized as this film is. On top of that, I love like how they use the soundtrack. I obviously love Spider-Man. I obviously love these characters. I love the action scenes in this. I like the type of stories I just love to have fun with are kind of in that Dragon Ball Z / superhero having fun on a super crazy adventure like this film is. And I think that's why I loved it so much. And I also relate to the feelings of not with great power comes with great responsibility. That is not the theme of this movie. It's living up to your expectations. And yeah, I fucking love this movie to death, and I don't care that I normally see movies multiple times, or I try not to see movies multiple times, because I will watch this film again as soon as I can. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. That was my initial thoughts on Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, which I didn't even say. Yeah, I'm gonna start doing these type of videos for superhero movies or any other films that normally I take off of my reviewing list and I still have a bunch of thoughts for. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and with that, I leave you.